The Dark Dyad. Part 1. Reminiscence. Chapter 1. The Beginning. The 1st of June 1938. Wednesday. The feeling started growing deep inside. It felt like a huge volcano was spilling scalding lava around my solar plexus. At some point, the sensation became completely uncontrollable. All I felt was an impulse. The impulse of the desire to destroy. To turn it into nothingness. To kill.
Tom.
Mrs. Cole called out to me. That nasty Mrs. Cole. I hated her sometimes so much. With every cell in my body I could feel her neglect, her disgust, and, most of all, her fear, which she so desperately hid. Probably many people don't know, but fear smells, and I can smell it from a great distance. Fortunately for this boy, the stern matron seemed to pull me out of some parallel world where we're just Billy and me.
It's late, get back in the building. What's going on here?
An insistent regard flitted between Billy and me.
Nothing.
My voice sounded calm. Not a muscle on my face twitched, and I looked at Mrs. Cole a little pitiful.
Billy and I were playing, and he fell.
Is that really so?
Mrs. Cole looked intently at the blond boy.
Yes.
He stammered. And when you tried to insult and humiliate me, your speech was very confident. How disgusting you are. You're definitely lucky she noticed us.
I'll get him to place Mrs. Cole.
I said with a slight smile.
Okay.
She snorted, and headed off to survey the small area next, corralling other kids in the orphanage. I tried to appear friendly and responsive. I leaned over and held out my hand to help Billy up from the dusty area, and then we walked together toward the building. I put my hand on his shoulder in a friendly way and felt him shrink with fear. Did you really think you could just insult and humiliate me and think you were better than me? No. I'm special. I know that. And you know that, Billy. And absolutely no one will ever dare to offend me. The front door creaked monotonously, humming the same rusty song that I had known by heart since childhood. Once inside, I tightened my grip on Billy's shoulder, not letting him leave as quickly as he wanted. I looked around carefully. There was no one on the first floor. In the middle of a small hall there was a staircase leading to the upper floors. In the late afternoon gloom it did not look friendly at all. I opened my mouth to tell sweet Billy that I'd let him go, because I was kind, but on one condition: he should apologize.
Please forgive me, Tom.
The apparently intelligent boy began to beg, ready to burst into tears in the next moment.
Please, I'm sorry. I will never say anything bad about you or your mother again.
Of course, you won't, Billy.
I paused for a moment, looking intently into his eyes.
After all, next time Mrs. Cole might not be around.
He looked at me with frightened eyes and breathed heavily. And his somewhat translucent face was flushed like a tomato. It seemed that even his entire head under the thin whitish hair was burgundy color. You are so pathetic.
Though?
I said calmly, pushing the puny shoulder away with disgust. Billy ran as fast as he could up the life-saving stairs to our floor. I followed him with my eyes and realized once again that I hated haste and fidgeting. I felt the urge to throw a boulder in his wake. With my hands in the pockets of my dark brown shorts, I slowly counted the steps up. There was a huge elongated window along the stairs, the glass either dirty or darkened. However, it was quite visible that beyond this window the dusky summer night was coming into full force. Lights out was supposed to be in 10 minutes, which meant I had time to walk to my room and not even get a slew of discontent from Mrs. Cole. The dim corridor was lit by 3 kerosene lamps. The finger of my left hand skimmed over the wall, and I slowly walked to the very end of that corridor. At the second lamp I stopped, bringing my finger closer to the source of light. It was clean. Insanely poor, but always clean. Perhaps that was the one good thing about keeping Wool's orphanage under Mrs. Cole. Every bully was always punished without fail and diligently scrubbed the corridors and floors, which made me insanely happy. I usually didn't get caught. And when I had my adventures for fun, I did not disdain to push the blame on someone else, making it look like there was nothing to hold me accountable. The tile beneath my foot shook, making a distinctive sound. I lazily kicked it, the nasty scraping sound echoed down the hall. Sighing heavily, I pushed a piece of tile back into place with my foot. That was all the entertainment. At the end of the corridor, I turned right and stared at the shabby numbers, 27. I got a slight queasy feeling, but I still pushed the door open, closing my eyes. Maybe this time it would be different. When I opened my eyes, I was disappointed for the 5th time this week. Everything was exactly the same as yesterday, the day before, a week ago, and a year ago. Inside the narrow room there was a bed, a table, a chair, and one wardrobe. Perhaps everything looked exactly the same in prison, only our place was clean. I routinely hung my neat, but already well-worn, clothes in the closet and took out my pajamas, which were a little too big. The suspicion that they weren't originally meant for me was an obsessive thought that came up every time I put them on. Dressed in orphanage rags, I passed by shuffling my feet to the bed, which was cold even in summer. It must have been because the building is made of stone. The bed was quite hard, and sometimes it annoyed me terribly, and sometimes I was sincerely glad to finally be on it, under a cool blanket, like now. Sometimes I have a lot of thoughts floating in my head, especially before I go to sleep. It doesn't bother me one bit, though, and I always end up falling asleep very soundly. Sometimes in my dreams I see an unusual green locket around my mother's neck. She is hugging me. Probably it's just a dream, because I've never seen her before. Late on the evening of December 31, 1926, here in London, in this Wool's orphanage, I was born, and she was gone. But Mrs. Cole told me that my father was somewhere. He would surely come back for me. I was named Tom after him, and my middle name was Marvelo after my grandfather. I wonder if my grandfather is still alive. Maybe he just doesn't know where I am either. My thoughts were interrupted by annoying noise and loud voices. The sound of some fuss was rapidly approaching the second-floor corridor. I wondered what had happened. Curiosity, or maybe irritation, got the better of me, and I slowly got off my bed. Must Mrs. Cole be dead? Well, that would be nice. A shadow of a smile touched my face. I sneaked noiselessly to the door. There was no point in opening it, it would be too loud, so I quietly bent down to the keyhole. Tough luck. Nothing could be seen, but for the orphanage staff's aprons. Also, the voices became more clearly audible.
Who brought you here?
It was Miss Blair's voice. She was quite a nice woman. Sometimes, of course, in secret from Mrs. Cole, she gave me some sweets. It happened very rarely. However, that's probably all I could say about her.
Why are you silent?
Miss Blair tried desperately to talk to someone, but no one answered.
Well, sit on this chair and wait here. We will prepare a room for you.
Finally, the women began to disperse. I could hardly make out anything in the dim light of the corridor, but I could still make out what was going on. I calmly waited for the slow shuffling steps of the last woman to disappear at the end of the corridor, and for the ticking of the clock that hung in the corner behind the door to be heard here. With a slight movement of my hand, I turned the handle and confidently opened the door. What stirred it all up? Or, who? There was a little girl about 10 or 11 years old, like me, sitting on a chair in the corridor. She was shaking her skinny legs in the air because they didn't reach the floor. She wore a simple light dress, white socks, black sandals. Her curly hair was a flowing river streaming down her shoulders. The door creaked, revealing my presence, and the girl flinched. She froze. I couldn't see her face in the darkness of the corridor, but I felt her stare.
Hello?
She finally said, realizing there was no danger.
Hello.
My name is Irene.
she said in a monotone, but she stopped shaking her legs, which clearly indicated her tension.
Tom.
I mechanically introduced myself. The girl turned away, peering at the end of the corridor. There were stairs to the third and first floors. Where did she come from? Late at night, did her parents bring her here? Anyway, I'm not interested. I heard muffled footsteps, someone was coming back. I slowly closed the door and went to my bed and fell into a long, awaited sleep.